Welcome to the Haven Collective. I'm J.R. Foresteros, and this is the Beacon Bit. Today we're talking about Joshua chapter 3, verses 14 through 17, when the Hebrews finally enter into the Promised Land. I grew up having one of my heroes as Neil Armstrong, the first human to walk on the moon. And it's partly because I was obsessed with space, but as I got older and as I read more and more about the moon landing, I learned that they were not ever sure, even after the astronauts launched, that they would be able to land on the moon, let alone humans be able to walk on the moon. One of the things they were actually concerned about was space dust. They didn't know how the moon without an atmosphere would deal with dirt, and so there was like a legitimate fear that if the lunar lander tried to land, it would just like sink in feet upon feet of moon dust, and that the astronauts would like fall into the dust and like sort of like quicksand, right? Obviously, that didn't happen. But I was amazed at this journey that was so perilous. And one of the fun facts is that the Apollo 11 rocket and the moon lander and all of the technology that got us to the moon and safely back has less computing power than our smartphones. Right, and yet it got 3 men successfully to the moon and back, which again, when you think about the audacity and the daring that it took to mount this mission, let alone to be the 3 men in the Apollo 11 capsule and the 2 men, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, who landed on the surface, it really is astounding. And of course, we have Neil Armstrong's famous line when he takes his first step on the moon. This is one small step for a man, but it's a giant leap for mankind. It's a really beautiful sentiment. And I think it encapsulates the empowering nature of the victory we feel when a change is successful. We went from being a species trapped on our own Earth to a species that can now walk among the stars. And, hopefully we're not done with that. Mars, I see you. We're coming for you next. Right? We've talked about throughout the series of Epiphany how difficult change is, that it is unfortunately a process that we go through of transformation. It's much less often a singular moment like we wish it was. But we're talking about this during Epiphany because Epiphany is the season when we celebrate that Jesus is with us. And so we've recognized that God is with us throughout the change process. God is there in the trenches with us, in the wilderness with us, suffering with us, growing with us, calling us along, inviting us along, and giving us the grace that we need to persist in change. And so we come here today in our story to the Jordan River. The people of the Hebrew nation have been in the wilderness for 40 years because the last time they were here, they were too afraid to enter. They were still thinking as enslaved people. And so they saw the settled lands in front of them and they thought, there's no way. We don't have a chance. So they had to spend 40 years learning to live as a free people, learning to live with this radical trust in God, that God would preserve them on a day-by-day basis. And now they come back. And echoing what happened at the Red Sea 40 years ago, the priests take the Ark of the Covenant, which was built for the tabernacle as the place where God's presence rests, and they march the Ark of the Covenant into the Jordan River, and the Jordan River stops. And the land dries up, and the people are able to cross. And this is the moment. This is that final piece of the puzzle moment that we talked about last week, where the people get to cross over on dry land into the Promised Land. It's this amazing celebratory moment, but they could have never gotten there without the 40 years in the wilderness. They could have never gotten there without the daily provision of manna. They could have never gotten there without the tabernacle that they built to represent God's presence among them and to make a space for God in their midst. This moment could not happen without everything that came before. And yet, here, they still have to take that final step into the Jordan riverbed, to trust that the waters will hold, to trust that they can cross on dry land. And they do. They cross and they enter into the Promised Land. It's a really amazing, powerful moment. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that as we have been looking at the process of change, if we've been considering the changes in our own lives and in our congregation and in our culture over the last weeks of Epiphany, that we have to ask too, are we going to be willing in the end of all of this to step into the Jordan, to have the faith that the God who has brought us this far is only just beginning? I hope that we do. Because the beauty of a church community is that we'll be in the water with you, waiting for you, holding up the ark, representing God's tangible presence, calling us all forward. I cannot wait to discuss what this means for us as individuals, for our congregation, for our communities, and our culture. We'll look forward to doing that on Sunday. Until then, happy final Sunday of Epiphany, and grace and peace go with you.